Hey guys, tonight, we follow a Mongol general dusty, disoriented, and desperately craving noodles as he stumbles through a town that may or may not exist on any actual map. You're in his boots now, and those boots, they're worn from weeks of riding across deserts where even the goats get bored. The wind kicks up sand that tastes like powdered brick, and your stomach grumbles like an angry yak in rut. You pull your heavy felt cloak tighter against the late autumn chill, though the horse you just dismounted still radiates the sweaty warmth of a long ride. The smell, think fermented milk and wet leather, comforting in a strangely barnyard sort of way. This isn't your first campaign, not by a long shot. You've survived siege lines at Xiangyang drunk kumis, with warlords even shared a fox stew with a man who once strangled a tiger. But tonight, all you want is a bowl of steaming slurpable noodles in a broth, rich enough to make your ancestors sigh from the heavens. You glance around the small Chinese trade town on the edge of the empire. It should be a simple errand, ask, eat, leave. But nothing's marked. No signboards you can read, just swirls of brushstroke characters that could mean noodle house or go away barbarian. You ask a passerby where to find a shop and they just blink at your armor. One gestures vaguely, possibly toward a bakery or maybe a prison. Historians still argue whether Mongol generals spoke any of the local dialects or just grunted and pointed at things until food appeared. Tonight you grunt. It doesn't help. The streets are packed with merchants rolling up their stalls, children weaving through them like loose chickens, and cats that seem to be judging you for existing. A scent of ginger and scallion wafts in from somewhere. You turn your head so fast your helmet slips. False alarm. It's just a medicine shop burning something that might cure gout, but smells suspiciously like roasted eel socks. It's getting darker now. The sun dips behind the clay rooftops, casting shadows that stretch like spilled ink. And here's the kicker, you're already lost. One wrong turn at the apothecary, and now you've circled past the same old man selling fermented plums 3 times. He's starting to smile at you, like you owe him rent. You mutter under your breath. How hard can it be to find a noodle shop? But the town isn't answering. These border settlements were built fast, often by people more concerned with trade routes than street grids. Scholars today speculate that some UN-era towns were intentionally confusing, perhaps to slow invaders, or just to mess with visiting generals. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. You consider eating your emergency dried meat ration, but it's older than some empires. And besides, it squeaks when you bite into it. You spit it out. Even a war-hardened Mongol has standards. You try another alley. The paving stones are slick with recent rain, and your boots echo with every heavy step. There's the faint sound of a lute playing somewhere, minor key, probably about lost love or bad tofu. You lean into the corner and breathe deep. Something smells promising this time. Is that pork, garlic? You quicken your pace. A small dog, possibly made entirely of fur and rage, charges at your ankles. You sidestep it like a battlefield arrow and mutter a few choice words in Mongolian. It barks as if offended. You arrive at a small square, empty now, except for a horse nibbling a basket of leeks. You approach the basket. It smells leafy, disappointingly leafy. No noodles, no broth, not even a soup spoon in sight. Your hands fall to your sides. This shouldn't be this hard. You've laid siege to cities bigger than this place. You once tracked a rebel leader across 3 provinces, and yet here you are surrounded by the glow of distant lanterns, chilled by the breeze, stomach aching, like you haven't eaten since Genghis was a toddler, and you still haven't found dinner. You sigh. Maybe this will be one of those character-building nights, the kind they write about in Future. Chronicles when they run out of real battles and start focusing on your quirks. General so-and-so, conqueror of cities. Slayer of rivals, master of getting hopelessly lost while craving soup. And you know what, you're oddly okay with that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I mean, if you're still listening to me chase phantom noodles in a 13th century maze, we might just be soul siblings. Wherever you are in the world, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you all are drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take another step into the unknown, guided only by noodle dreams and historical inertia. You turn a corner that feels familiar. Wasn't that same tilted wooden sign above the door an alley back? It sways lazily in the breeze, etched with characters you still can't read, but that probably say something like, definitely not noodles here. Your boots scuff against uneven stones, each one betraying the illusion of progress. The sky above fades from smoky orange to a soot-colored blue, and the buildings begin to lean in on you, not literally, but you feel it all the same. Narrower streets, dimmer light, a sense of being watched by bored cats mostly, but still. The thing about these alleys is they curve without warning. Just when you think you're heading toward that tantalizing smell of sesame oil, you're right back where you started next to the fermented plum guy, now chewing one of his own wares with an expression of raw determination. You nod. He nods back. A bond forms between men who both know disappointment. It's almost funny. You command cavalry units like chess pieces. You've mapped river crossings without even seeing them. But tonight, a noodle shop eludes you like a whispered legend. The Mongol Empire. At this point, spans from the Pacific to the Danube. Historians still argue whether it was the largest contiguous empire in human history, but not a single outpost includes a U or here map for lost generals looking for dinner. The alleys hum with life, though most of it is closing up. Market stalls fold in like turtles retreating into their shells. Children yank laundry off lines. A man hurriedly gathers what appear to be medicinal frogs. You pause, maybe one of them is for soup. But no, just a bag of frogs and a bow. He shuffles away, leaving you with one glimmering footprint in a puddle. Even the animals here seem to know where they're going. A chicken saunters past you with deep personal confidence. You briefly consider following it. A cluster of women with baskets giggle as you walk by, maybe at your helmet, maybe at your increasingly puzzled expression. You stop to ask one about food, but the words get tangled. You point to your stomach. She laughs harder, mimics eating, then shrugs and says something that sounds like, "Go left at the big goat." You want to believe that's not a metaphor. So you go left. There's a shrine ahead, tiny and wedged between two buildings, like a secret only grandmothers know. Inside it, a small red candle flickers next to a carved wooden duck. Offerings, rice, a few coins, and wait a single perfect noodle. Long, unbroken, coiled like a sacred relic. You lean closer. Could it be a sign? A wind gust snuffs the candle. The noodle vanishes. Okay then. You reach a T-junction flanked by shuttered tea houses. A stray lute chord echoes from a nearby window. You squint through the gloom. One building has smoke rising from its roof vent, a promising clue. You speed up, armor clanking softly, footsteps hopeful. The door is open just a crack. You peer inside. It's a bathhouse. Warm, steamy, filled with the scent of pine and damp bamboo mats. Several elderly men sit naked in wooden tubs, playing dice and slapping each other with washcloths. One sees you, raises a soapy hand and says something cheerful. You nod politely and back away. Wrong kind of steam. You try the next corner. Another street. Another loop. Hard to tell anymore. The problem is these alleyways are a design puzzle. During the Yuan dynasty, cities absorbed layer after layer of old street plans. Mongol engineers sometimes rebuilt towns by simply rotating older street layouts 90 degrees, leading to what historians still call directional chaos. You call it a Tuesday. Eventually, you find a low wall to sit on. Your legs ache. Your cloak's edge is damp. You shift and something squishes beneath you. You leap up. A peach. You've sat on a peach. Somewhere in the cosmos, Confucius laughs. You wipe peach from your cloak and lean back. There's a lantern flickering at the far end of the lane. It swings from a crooked wooden pole, casting buttery light across the cobblestones. You rise and head toward it, drawn like a moth with slightly better armor. As you pass a door, it swings open. A man carrying a sack nearly barrels into you. You catch a whiff of flour and meat, your eyes widen. You ask quickly food while miming a bowl. He hesitates, then grins toothlessly and points behind him. That way, he says in rough Mongolian. Finally, a breakthrough. You step in the direction he points, eager now ready. The alley opens into a small courtyard, surrounded by windows shuttered tight. You see a faded sign above one door. A carved bowl. Steam lines etched beside it. This must be it. You push the door. Empty. Just crates, dust, and a broom leaning sadly against a barrel. The toothless man appears behind you. He shrugs, then closes the door. Your stomach mutters something rude, so you keep walking. One more turn. Just one more. Because surely no town can have this many noodleless streets. Unless, is this all part of the design? There's a theory fringe, admittedly, that some border towns used confusing layouts, not just for defense, but for trade control. If strangers got lost, they'd stay longer, spend more, get too hungry to haggle. Maybe you're walking through one of history's first economic traps, and it's working. You round another bend. The scent of garlic returns distant but distinct. You straighten your back and march on. You will find that noodle shop, even if it takes the whole night. Your boots slosh through a narrow alley where water collects in sunken grooves glinting under the moonlight like silver threads, woven through a patchwork quilt of mud and moss. It smells like old cabbage and hope, a peculiar combination that does nothing to still the ache in your belly. You press forward past a laundry line heavy with damp robes ducking instinctively as a sock brushes your helmet. Somewhere someone is cooking something. You can smell it. You can almost hear the sizzle. You pause beneath an archway where time seems to slow. There, etched crudely on the bricks in what looks like chicken grease, are two arrows, one pointing up, the other left. Both are labeled with characters you can't read. You go left. Why not? This path narrows even more. The stone walls close in warm from the day's heat, but cold to the soul. On one side, a wooden shutter creaks open. A face peers out, wrinkled, curious, and utterly unimpressed. The old woman offers you a stare like only a grandma can give one that judges your choices, your outfit, and probably your parents. You raise your eyebrows in silent inquiry. She closes the shutter. Okay then. You sigh and keep moving, brushing past a stack of woven baskets filled with, what is that, dried mushrooms, maybe. You sniff one. It smells like a sandal that's been to war. You move on. Suddenly, the alley opens into a tiny courtyard, where three men sit cross-legged on a mat, chewing slowly and seriously on something you hope is edible. A small clay pot steams in their midst. You clear your throat. One man looks up, squints. He's missing an eyebrow. Another wears a hat shaped like a fish. You ask once again the same tired question, noodles. The one with the fish hat replies, no noodle here. Lamb fat rice ball. Want some? You decline politely, but accept a lump of the rice ball anyway. It's warm, sticky, slightly chewy, slightly mysterious. You chew, carefully swallowing your pride along with what might be an unchewed raisin. It's not what you wanted, but it's food. They offer you a seat. You sit. The courtyard has a tranquility that presses into your bones. A wind chime dances, somewhere overhead, its notes hesitant and dreamlike. You rest your back against a wall, still scanning the edges of the square. There must be another alley, another direction to try. You glance down. One of the men is unrolling something beside the pot, a hide no way to map. You lean forward eagerly. It's made of sheepskin, hand-inked, curling at the corners. You ask to see it. The eyebrowless man shrugs and hands it over. It's beautiful. Useless, but beautiful. A rough sketch of terrain with no legend, a compass rose that spins in your imagination, and several drawings of yaks doing suspiciously human things. Still, it confirms a long-standing scholarly theory. Mongol cartography, while functional for horseback travel, was often more illustrative than literal. Some maps weren't even meant for navigation but for storytelling or tribute. One even included a joke about a goat that got promoted. You trace a line on the map, guessing at the markings. They're a symbol that might be a bowl, or a hat, or a bowl on a hat. You point to it. The fish hat man nods solemnly, then gestures behind you. You thank them. With a slight bow, slide your helmet back on and step through the arch behind the courtyard. This new street is wider, paved more cleanly with hanging lanterns shaped like lotus flowers. For the first time all evening, it feels like you're making actual progress. There are sounds again, pots clinking, faint laughter, the hiss of something frying. You break into a light trot. Your stomach leaps like a happy goat. You turn the corner. It's a meat shop. Just meat, hanging from hooks, dried on racks, soaking in vats. No broth. No noodles. Just meat. The butcher eyes you with suspicion as you enter. He's large-scarred and busy sharpening a cleaver that's seen more bones than a battlefield. You ask anyway. Noodles. He wipes his blade, points to a door in the back. You open it. It's not a noodle shop. It's a storeroom, full of goat skulls and an impressive array of pickled something. You close the door slowly and back away. Outside again, you hear someone shouting. A young boy runs past, shouting what sounds like brother's place, open soup hot. You follow, past a weaver's hut, past a sleeping dog that twitches as if dreaming of beef, past two men playing dice with what looks suspiciously like fish bones. You almost trip over a basket of turnips. You don't care. The scent is stronger now, ginger garlic oil. It tickles your nose like a promise. And then nothing. A cul-de-sac. Empty. A paper lantern drifts above, swinging gently. You stand there frozen, wondering if the town itself is toying with you. You rub your temples. Maybe the noodle shop is a myth. Maybe it was never real to begin with. Historians still debate whether certain establishments in smaller UN towns functioned only seasonally, or if noodle shops were a rotating concept popping up like food ghosts when the need arose. It's also been suggested some merchants kept no fixed location moving each night to avoid taxes or in-laws. You slump against a wall, arms folded, a soft groan escaping your lips. Then, from the shadows, a voice. You look hungry. You spin. An old man draped in cloth patched like a quilt grins at you with teeth like old rice grains, looking for noodles. You nod urgently. He points with a bony finger. Cross the bridge. Third left. Follow the singing. You blink. There is no bridge here, but when you look again, there is. And it's made of stone you swear wasn't there moments ago. You stand motionless for a breath, maybe two, staring at the bridge that wasn't there before. It arches gracefully over a stream so still it might be painted the water black as ink and just as reflective. No splash, no breeze, just the soft shimmer of lantern light bouncing off its surface. You step forward slowly, testing the ground with one cautious boot. The stone feels solid, ancient even. You run a finger along its edge, worn smooth, cool to the touch, like it's been here for centuries. And yet, you know it wasn't. Behind you, the old man with the rice grain teeth chuckles. Don't wait too long. Bridges can be shy. Shy bridges. That's new. You cross it. Halfway across, something shifts. The soundscape changes. The town behind you seems to mute itself, no more dice clacking. No wind chimes. Not even the grumble of your own stomach. All you hear is your breath and the gentle creak of your armor as you walk. It's peaceful. Also, mildly unsettling. When you reach the other side, the air feels warmer. Not hot, just toasted. It smells faintly of roasted sesame and sweet soy, a scent so inviting you momentarily forget your confusion. You follow the narrow street ahead. It's flanked by squat homes with rounded roofs and tiny flower boxes filled with unfamiliar blooms that glow softly in the dark. Either they're rare bioluminescent plants, or you've reached peak noodle fatigue. A shadow moves in a window. A paper screen slides shut. You pause, glancing up, just as a child peeks through wooden slats in the shutters. She locks eyes with you, then grins and vanishes. A second later, a turnip is tossed out the window and lands squarely at your feet. You look at the turnip. It's not much to go on. But tonight, this root vegetable is your first real clue. You pick it up, turn it over in your hand. It's carved. Barely visible in the dim light, tiny etched lines trace the shape of a bowl complete with steam curls rising from the top. A crude attempt at a map. Directions, an edible omen. You pocket it. A general doesn't question divine tubers. As you pass the next house, a small dog begins to follow you. Mangy, crooked tail wearing what looks like a child's slipper around its neck. It trots along confidently, occasionally glancing back like a furry scout. You eye it warily. You better not be leading me to a vegetable stall. The dog sneezes in response. You carry on deeper into this softer lit quarter of the town. The roads curve more gently here. The stones are more even. The town almost feels kind, as if this is where someone's grandmother secretly controls the weather and sets the mood with jasmine candles. A group of merchants passes you, all dressed in faded silk robes, their voices low and their pace unhurried. One of them, the tallest with a braided beard and sleeves that drag on the ground, nods to you in greeting. You seize the chance. Excuse me. Food. He raises an eyebrow. You try again, miming eating with chopsticks. Noodles. He smiles politely. Most good things arrive only after you stop looking, which is either a philosophical truth or a deeply unhelpful dinner suggestion. You bow because what else can you do? You walk on, trailing the dog. It pauses at intersections and waits for you to catch up. It doesn't bark, doesn't sniff, just watches. Maybe it's a spirit guide, or maybe it just really hates being alone. Eventually, you come upon a courtyard nestled between sloping walls. A plum tree leans over one side, its branches twitching gently in the breeze. A small canal cuts through the center, Its water clearer than any you've seen all night. And there, sitting under a paper lantern shaped like a shrimp, is a man. He's eating something out of a bowl. You freeze. Could it be you approach slowly? He sees you, sets down his chopsticks, and wipes his mouth with a cloth that might once have been part of a curtain. Looking for something, he asks. Your voice cracks Noodles. He nods, solemnly gestures to the spot beside him. Sit. You drop down like a sack of arrows, armor clanking against the wooden bench. He hands you the bowl. Steam rises. You brace yourself. Inside cabbage, a hint of broth, a single floating mushroom slice. No noodles. You stare. He pats your shoulder. Soup's good for the soul. It's fine, salty, warm, possibly spiced with disappointment. As you sip, you glance around. The dog curls up beneath your bench and lets out a sigh. The lantern flickers, and somewhere in the distance, carried faintly on the wind, you swear you hear singing. High, melodic, unmistakably human. The man with the soup looks up. Third left, he murmurs. You blink. What? He smiles. If you're still looking. Third left. Past the shrines. You set down the bowl, heart flickering with cautious hope. The dog gets up too, like it knows the score. You thank the soup man and rise lighter now, not from the meal, but from the sliver of purpose returned to your bones. Because tonight, this might be the Noodle Shop. The real one. You can feel it. So you follow the sound. Toward the third left. Toward shrines and steam and salvation by starch. The road ahead glows faintly with lanterns strung like constellations hung just low enough to touch. Each one carries a different shape. Peach dragon moonfish, and as you pass beneath them, their paper bellies ripple in the night air, as if whispering secrets you're not quite allowed to hear. Your pace quickens, bootsteps echoing softly, the little dog trotting faithfully beside you. Ears perked in rhythmic bounce. The singing grows clearer. Now, female voices light and reedy layering over one another like silk scarves in a breeze. A melody that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby, or perhaps a drinking song slowed down for the sleep-deprived. Either way, it pulls you forward past shuttered storefronts and bundles of firewood stacked beneath doorways. You reach an intersection where a stone shrine leans into the corner like an elderly man tired of standing straight. Candles flicker at its base, casting golden shadows across the deity's face, some kind of lizard-headed figure with a jade tongue and exaggerated eyebrows. You stare. It stares back. The dog barks once abruptly. You blink. And now you see them shrines everywhere. Each small alcove holds a different figure. A one-eyed bird god wearing sandals, a toothy fish atop a lotus throne, even a smiling sun with fingers. They're scattered along the walls like a gallery of the strange and the sacred. Historians still debate whether these shrines represented official deities, regional spirits, or simply the fevered imaginations of overworked stonemasons. Some suggest they were culinary patrons, guardians of fermentation rice harvests, or the act of boiling water just right. You pass each one carefully nodding with the practiced solemnity of someone hedging spiritual bets, just in case any of them control noodle placement. At the third, left, turn, the singing fades, replaced by the soft clink of dishes. You stop. Inhale. Yes, this is it. A low building with wooden shutters pulled open like welcoming arms. Smoke curls from a stovepipe. The air buzzes with warmth and the scent of soy, garlic, and meat fat rendered down to its most delicious essence. Light spills out from inside, buttery and amber. You move toward the door, the dog close at your heels. And then, like some kind of cosmic prank, a goose steps in your path. A very large, very white goose. It hisses. You freeze. The goose stands its ground, wings slightly outstretched, neck craned forward in the universal pose of you shall not pass. For a moment, you and the bird engage in a primal standoff. In another life, you were the general who helped capture Kaifeng. In this one, you're being challenged by poultry. The dog yaps once unhelpfully. The goose does not flinch. You slowly reach into your pouch and produce the rice ball from earlier. A peace offering. The goose takes it, then waddles off into the dark like it owns the neighborhood. You exhale. The path is clear. Inside the room is small, maybe 5 tables total, but packed with the cozy clutter of 1,000 nights. Wooden beams dark with smoke. Scrolls pinned on the walls with what might be love poems or noodle-themed haiku. Shelves lined with bottles in every shade of brown. A cat naps on the top shelf tail, flicking as if in time to some unseen metronome. A man behind the counter raises his head. His beard is more philosophical than practical, and he wears an apron stained with what might be 20 years of soup memory. He nods. Sit, he says. You sit. The dog curls beneath your feet. The man disappears into the back without further conversation. Somewhere metal clinks. Water boils. Chopped scallions rain down like confetti on a victorious feast. As you wait, your eyes drift to the other patrons. Two scholars argue in hushed tones over whether garlic should be toasted or raw. A woman with sunburnt cheeks gently feeds her baby while slurping from a bowl the size of a helmet. A traveling musician snoozes at the end table, chopsticks still in hand. No one looks twice at your armor. You belong here at least for tonight. Steam rises from the counter. The shopkeeper returns holding the bowl like it's a newborn deity. And at long last. Noodles. Thick, twisted, glorious. Floating in a broth so fragrant you nearly lose consciousness. You lift the bowl hands, trembling just slightly. The first sip burns the tip of your tongue in the best possible way. Umami wraps itself around your soul. The noodles are springy joyful even, as if they know how long you've waited. You slurp them unashamed. The dog watches, tail thumping. You feed it a strand. It sneezes and wags. You sit back, cheeks warm, chest full. You close your eyes not to sleep, but to savor this moment of accidental victory. Of all the Mongol general legends that echo through time, this one will never be told. But to you, it matters more than 100 battle scrolls. You conquered a noodleless labyrinth of twisted alleys, surreal shrines, and poultry-based bureaucracy. And now you've earned this. You glance around the room, but strangely, there are no signs, no name above the door, no prices, no menus, just steam-quiet slurps and that dog-shaped guardian spirit under your bench. You realize something. This place wasn't on any map because it wasn't meant to be found easily. It had to be deserved. You linger over the bowl like a monk over scripture, letting each sip rewrite your understanding of the universe. The broth, somehow richer than even memory could dream, clings to the noodles with affectionate precision. A slight tingle follows every swallow, a hint of Sichuan. Pepper. Corn. Maybe. Or maybe it's the faint hum of exhaustion doing a little dance on your tongue. The old shopkeeper watches from behind the counter, arms folded across his chest, his apron soaked with culinary wisdom. You meet his gaze and raise two fingers, not for another portion, but in a gesture that means something like, "You, sir, are a noodle wizard, and I acknowledge your sorcery." He smiles barely. The little dog thumps its tail, now curled like a snail beneath your bench. You slide it a bit of pork. It licks it once, then resumes its nap, clearly satisfied with how the night's turned out. You glance around again, trying to memorize the place. There's a warmth here that isn't just from the soup. It seeps into the grain of the wood, the lacquered bowls, even the low-hanging ceiling that might have once sheltered monks, poets, or mildly concussed warriors. One wall bears a mural painted directly onto the plaster, a great dragon coiled around a noodle bowl the size of a house. The brushwork is frantic but oddly moving. You wonder briefly whether the artist was paid in broth. You don't want to leave. But as with all perfect moments, time finds a way to reassert itself. A bell rings softly behind the counter. Not a call bell, but the kind that might signal a shift in realms. The shopkeeper moves toward the door, opens it, and gestures not urgently, not even expectantly, just a quiet suggestion. The meal is done. You rise slowly, bow your head in thanks, and reach for your coin pouch. He shakes his head. You blink. No charge. He only smiles, then gestures toward a small wooden plaque hanging on the wall. It's inscribed with a single character in brushed red ink, one you can't read. You point to it, curious. The shopkeeper says simply, memory. Historians still argue whether establishments like this ever truly existed. Some claim there were legendary roaming kitchens in the Yuan era, soup shacks that opened only when someone truly needed them, run by culinary monks or retired assassins. The evidence is sparse. But then again, so is the proof for a lot of good things in history. You step out into the alley. Again, heart light or belly full, and not quite sure if that was real. But the bridge is gone. Where once there had been a stone arc over still black water, now there's just a narrow cobbled path leading somewhere else entirely. No lizard. Shrines. No fish lanterns. Just regular town. Again sleepy, silent plain. You exhale, watch the vapor leave your lips like a tiny ghost of relief. The little dog trots out after you, stretches and looks up as if to say, "Where next, boss? You let your boots decide." They creak as you walk, soles finally softened by warm soup and city soot. The streets are emptier now. Just a few figures packing away the last of the night stalls, some dried beans, bundles of firewood, what may be a stack of dried fish wrapped like presents. You pass a pair of elderly men smoking long pipes and murmuring about dreams. One glances at you and smiles in recognition, though you're sure you've never seen him before. As you pass a tea house, someone leans out with a yawn and offers you a cup of something herbal and confusing. You sip. It tastes like sleep and chamomile having a polite conversation. You bow, return the cup, and move on. At the corner of the street, you spot something familiar, the plum seller, still seated on his crate, surrounded by jars that glisten in the lantern light like gems in syrup. He nods at you. You nod back. Only this time, you hand him the carved turnip. He studies it, then laughs softly like he understands something you never will. He places it beside him as if it's part of the inventory now. You walk on. The town feels different somehow. Not changed, just softened. As if it knows your business here is done. And then you see it. A large banner fluttering gently in the wind above a quiet square. It's blank. No words, no symbols. Just a red cloth, clean and waiting. You pause beneath it, wondering if it was always there. The dog sniffs at your boot, then sneezes dramatically. You sit down on a bench just for a moment, but it's the kind of moment that grows into something longer. Your eyelids grow heavy. The hum of night begins to wrap itself around your shoulders like a cloak. You rest your head back against the wooden wall behind you, gaze at the stars above, fuzzy now like candle flames underwater. The world goes quiet. And maybe, just maybe, you'll wake up with the taste of noodles still on your tongue. You wake, or maybe you were never asleep in a different part of the town. The stars have shifted overhead, and the moon is higher now, hanging like a pale rice cake pinned to silk. The bench is gone. Or perhaps you never sat. The dog is still there watching you with the kind of calm that suggests it understands time better than you ever will. Your stomach at last is quiet. Not full exactly, but quiet in that special way that only comes from having tasted exactly what it wanted. You rise, bones cracking softly, and scan your surroundings. You're in a different alley now. The cobblestones are dry and flatter, the air warmer. You can smell charcoal, sesame oil, and something faintly nutty. Perhaps peanuts roasting nearby. The town around you hums in low tones, less like the vibrant confusion of earlier, and more like a village exhaling after a long day. There's comfort in this stillness. You take a few steps, boots echoing like you're walking through someone's memory. Around the next corner is a sight both familiar and alien. A small pavilion filled with scribes hunched over low tables. Candles flicker in glass jars, illuminating scrolls, inkpots, and the occasional chicken feather plucked straight from its source. The scribes mutter, scribble, sip tea. It feels less like a workplace and more like a midnight club for people who really like vowels. You approach cautiously. One scribe, a wiry man with onion breath so strong it nearly brings tears to your eyes, looks up. His eyebrows arch like distant hills. You look like someone who misplaced his appetite. He says. You nod, still blinking from the invisible onion vapor cloud. He waves you closer. From under his robes, he pulls a scroll wrapped in faded twine. He unrolls it slowly, revealing a piece of parchment that seems to be half menu, half journal entry. Symbols for duckfish and cabbage spiral outward from a noodle bowl, drawn in alarming detail. There's even a tiny Mongol helmet doodled in the corner. Coincidence? You doubt it. You ask him, "Where did this come from?" He sniffs, shrugs, and says, "It came from a dream. Someone forgot to forget." Helpful. The scroll is written in a mix of characters. Some Chinese, some Fagspa script used under Kublai Khan's reign, some probably invented by a bored monk. You can read bits, words like boil broth and beware of eels. Intriguing combination. Historians still debate whether such multilingual documents were ever common in border towns. Some argue they were proof of bureaucratic overreach. Others suggest they were the precursors of fast food menus. The truth, as usual, is probably somewhere between miscommunication and mild hunger. The scribe taps one part of the parchment to corner with a sketch of a very familiar-looking dog. Your dog, the one currently licking its own paw with oblivious grace. He leans in and says, "The shop is mobile, like wind, or guilt." You stare. He grins, onion breath intensifying. Or maybe it's just behind the bathhouse. He rolls the scroll up again and tucks it under his robe. You blink. So, there's another noodle shop. He shrugs. There's always another noodle shop. That's the joy and the curse. Before you can press further, he goes back to writing. You peek over his shoulder and catch a line. He wandered hungry, but found more than food. Poetic, infuriating. You wander on. The street bends like a question mark. You follow it, flanked by buildings that seem to lean in as if curious about your next move. A rooster crows at an inappropriate hour. You pass a clothesline where a single sock spins in the wind like a prophecy you're not ready to interpret. Then you see a rickety cart with a steaming pot and no vendor in sight. The dog perks up. You approach, lift the lid. Inside broth. Not soup, not stew. Just a deep pot of broth with long winding noodles drifting like silk threads. No bowls, no chopsticks, no sign. Just the food waiting. You look around. Nothing. No one. You tear a strip of cloth from your undershirt, dip it like a scoop, and sip. It's perfect. You close your eyes. If the earlier bowl was warmth, this one is memory. Not just yours either. It tastes like festivals you never attended, lullabies you never learned, and someone else's grandmother's kitchen. It tastes like belonging in a place you never expected to find. The cart creaks. You open your eyes. It's gone. The broth remains for a moment, then vanishes in the steam. You're left holding a damp strip of cloth and a heart full of questions. The dog barks softly, tail wagging. You sigh. Another shop, another clue. Another bowl of answers served in spoonfuls of confusion. But maybe that's the lesson. Maybe the search is the dish. The journey, the seasoning, and the absurdity. Well, that's the garnish. You follow the dog because at this point it clearly knows more than you do. Its crooked tail wags as it trots confidently through an arched gate that seems to have appeared just for you. The streets here are quieter, less a neighborhood, and more a dream, remembered too late. The cobblestones are warmer underfoot, the lanterns above swaying without wind. Someone somewhere is humming. You turn a corner and nearly stumble into a tofu cart. It's surrounded by an eclectic gathering. 2 philosophers wrapped in patchwork robes, a baker with flour on his nose, and a man holding a frog with unsettling reverence. They stand in a loose semicircle, listening intently to the tofu vendor who is in the middle of a very passionate speech about texture. Tofu, he proclaims, holding a cube aloft like a sacred relic, is the cloud of the tongue. It must tremble, but never collapse. You blink. I'm looking for a noodle shop. The frog guy nods sagely. Aren't we all? You glance at the philosophers, hoping for clarity. One of them, an older man with eyebrows like wild moss, strokes his beard and says, "Time is not a line, but a bowl. You may already have eaten, or you might still be waiting. Either way, you are full." The younger philosopher, chewing absently on a sprig of something leafy, adds, "Maybe noodles are a metaphor for desire." You look down at the dog who gives you the canine equivalent of a shrug. The tofu vendor takes pity on you. "I know a guy," he says. "Broth like melted heaven. Noodles that sing when you chew. Third alley past the bell tower. But he's only open when the moon is above the crane statue." You glance up. No crane. Just clouds. You decide to take your chances anyway. You thank the vendor, accept a cube of silken tofu, and carry on. The tofu is cold, but strangely refreshing, like eating a marshmallow made of wind. You pass the bell tower, an elegant structure with a cracked bronze bell, and 2 monks arguing over whose turn it is to ring it. Neither of them sees you. Or maybe they do and have chosen to ignore your noodle quest out of spiritual discipline. Monks are weird like that. You take the third alley. It narrows quickly, squeezing between buildings like a breath being held. Your shoulders brush the walls. Overhead, laundry lines hang like prayer flags. A smell wafts through the air, ginger and vinegar, and a faint suggestion of scallion. Your heart jumps. You round the bend. A door. A red one half open with a faded cloth hanging above it. The symbol painted on the cloth could be the character for noodle or banana. You're not sure. Inside, you hear gentle slurping. You step through. The room is small, candlelit. At a low table sits a woman alone, eating slowly, methodically, with the calm of someone solving a puzzle made of broth. She looks up at you, gestures to the seat across from her. I'm not the cook, she says, but you're welcome to wait. You sit. She offers you a bowl of tea that smells like roasted barley and old rain. It's slightly bitter but warming. You ask her about the Noodle Shop. She smiles. It appears when it's needed, she says, not when it's asked for. You stare. Is this a noodle-themed ghost story? She shrugs. Everything is a ghost story if you wait long enough. The dog sneezes. You sit in silence for a moment, letting the tea do its quiet work. A soft breeze stirs the curtain above the door, and you realize the moon has peeked through the clouds. Outside, something caws. The woman rises, bows slightly, and walks to the back. You hear soft footsteps, the clink of ceramic. Then nothing. You're alone. The dog whines. You rise and open the back door. There's nothing there, just another alley. You step through anyway, guided by instinct and noodle-related desperation. The air here feels older. It smells like damp stone and bamboo shoots. A garden stretches ahead, tiny plots of herb scallions and chili peppers arranged like an edible prayer. In the center, a kettle steams over a quiet flame. Beside it, an old man kneels in meditation. He opens one eye. You found me, he says. You blink. I wasn't exactly sure I was looking for you. He nods. Good. That's the only way it works. You glance around. Is this a restaurant? He chuckles. It's an understanding. He lifts the kettle, pours broth into 2 wooden bowls. From a nearby basket, he plucks fresh noodles, thin hand-cut, nearly translucent. He adds them without ceremony. You'll eat now, he says, and you'll remember differently. You accept the bowl. Steam curls up like incense. The dog sits quietly beside you, eyes closed, as if in prayer. You sip, and the world softens again. The first taste of the monk's broth is so subtle it nearly escapes you, a whisper of flavor rather than a shout. It moves across your tongue like memory, the kind that flickers at the edge of sleep. The noodles are soft and hesitant, unraveling like the answer to a question you forgot you asked. You slurp slowly, reverently. The monk doesn't speak, nor do you. Around you, the garden crackles with nighttime live crickets, the soft rustle of bamboo, and the occasional pop from the kettle as it simmers, quietly, on its bed of coals. It's the kind of silence that doesn't beg to be filled. It wraps around you like a quilt. The dog licks the ground, then lies flat, with a huff, clearly, at peace. You're not sure what part of town you're in anymore, or if you're even in town at all. There are no walls here, no doors. Just low hedges and a curved stone path that disappears into darkness. You glance at the monk. How did I get here? He raises an eyebrow. By asking the right hunger, you let that hang in the air. Cryptic wisdom seems to be tonight's special. He finishes his own bowl, then tosses a piece of ginger root into the fire where it hisses and perfumes the air. He leans back, gazing at the moon. People think hunger is about food, he says softly. But hunger is also what leads you forward. It's what opens gates. You nod. You've spent the whole night chasing a craving, turning corners, reading turnips and negotiating with geese. And somehow, that silly gnawing need for noodles has guided you further than any battle plan. The monk stands, stretches with the ease of someone whose joints haven't yet signed a peace treaty with age, and begins tending to a small clay pot in the corner of the garden. You offer to help. He waves a hand. Just watch. From a basket he pulls thin strips of dried vegetables, crumbles them between his fingers, and stirs them into the pot. Then a ladleful of broth, a pinch of salt from a pouch tied to his belt, a squeeze of citrus from a shriveled fruit. The aroma rises like a story. And then you hear it, the faintest sound, somewhere beyond the garden wall. A note high and warbling, maybe a flute, maybe the wind pretending to be one. The monk perks up. Ah, the moon dogs. You squint. The what he gestures to the night sky. When the moon is full and the air is damp, they come. Not real dogs' reflections, ghosts of loyalty and appetite. You'll hear them howling across rooftops. And you do. Another note now, then a third. Not quite howling, but almost harmonic. You turn your head and catch a flicker on the breeze movement along the rooftop. Pale, flickering shapes loping soundlessly. Not dogs exactly, but shadows shaped like them. Not threatening, just passing through. On their way somewhere else. The monk doesn't even look. They follow smells, especially soup. Of course they do. As they pass, something else drifts in their wake. The unmistakable scent of jasmine tea and smoked duck skin. You blink. You know that smell. You've followed it before. The monk stirs his pot again. There's a garden ahead, he murmurs. Hidden inside the city. Walled on all sides. Only opens when the tea smoke shows the path. You look around. There's no gate here. No exit. Just the garden, the monk, and your now empty bowl. But the dog's nose lifts. It stands. Looks east. And then you see it. Thin trails of smoke, curling low across the ground, fragrant curling like fingers beckoning. The monk smiles. Time to go. You thank him, bowing low. He chuckles. You'll probably get lost again. But that's part of it. As you walk away, the dog by your side, the monk calls out one last thing. The garden has no door, only trust, which is exactly the kind of phrase that sounds wise until you try to make practical use of it. The smoke leads you down a winding path that shouldn't fit between buildings, yet somehow does. It winds like a ribbon and you follow, step by step, quietly. The moon above slips behind a veil of clouds, but the smoke glows faintly, maybe reflecting lantern light, maybe something else. Then, the air shifts. The ground flattens beneath your feet and you realize you're somewhere new again. Trees rise around you. Willow branches brush your shoulders. And in the center of this secret grove under a wooden arbor sits another noodle shack. But this one is different. No sign, no windows, just the scent of broth and thyme. Inside, a kettle hums. The shop is empty, save for a single chair and a bowl already waiting. The dog jumps up onto a cushion and yawns. You sit. Steam curls up to meet you, fragrant and ancient. You lift the bowl spoon, trembling slightly in your hand. And then a familiar taste, but somehow entirely new. You don't rush it. You take the first bite like a ritual, letting the steam coat your face, your eyelids, your memories. The broth is delicate floral at first, then rich with something deeper, earthier. Fermented soybean. A whisper of aged garlic. It's as though the soup has been thinking about you, waiting to reveal itself, only when you were ready to receive it. The noodles are long and winding like the night's journey. They cling to the spoon with just enough resistance to make every mouthful feel earned. You slurp. The sound echoes faintly in the wooden shack, and even the dog looks impressed. You sit in silence, absorbing more than just sustenance. Each spoonful brings not only warmth to your belly, but a strange kind of clarity, as if the route through this absurd, labyrinthine town is being slowly drawn inside your chest. Not on a map. Not in your mind, but in your bones. The shack around you creaks softly, settling like an old man sighing into a familiar chair. From somewhere behind the back wall comes the sound of dried herbs rustling. A shadow passes. Then, quiet again. You wonder, has someone been preparing these bowls in advance? Was this meal always waiting for you to arrive? Historians still debate how much UN urban planning was intentional versus chaotic. Cities grew in fits and starts, incorporating older districts' sacred spaces, even the occasional imperial whim. The result, towns full of overlapping logic, sacred alleys that couldn't be paved over, districts no one could ever quite explain. Some scholars even propose that wayfinding in such towns was not about direction, but intuition, a kind of psychic momentum where you followed smells, sounds, and feelings rather than streets. If that's true, you've become a master of this silent language. As you drain the bowl, the scent of sandalwood rises, not from the soup, but from the very walls. The shack pulses with a soft hush, less a sound, more a sensation. You blink slowly. The dog thumps its tail, once rises and nudges the door with its nose. You follow. Outside, the grove is still, but the path is new. Smooth, paved with red stones that glimmer faintly under moonlight. You walk it without hesitation, now led not by logic but by noodle memory. You pass a carved stone arch beneath which an inscription reads, "You are now beyond the map." Fitting. Ahead, a raised pavilion appears, elevated slightly above a pond that reflects the stars like shattered porcelain. Inside the pavilion, a spice merchant's cart, though no merchant in sight. You climb the stairs. On the cart are little bowls, maybe a dozen, each filled with something different: star anise, Sichuan pepper black vinegar, powdered mushroom, roasted garlic paste. You lean in. The smell is intoxicating, deep, strange, old. You inhale the scent of clove and are briefly transported to a battlefield camp, where a stew once gave courage to trembling hands. A small handwritten note beside the cart reads, "For the broth of your memories." It's not a shop. It's a station, a place to remember, or to flavor what you've already learned. You lift a tiny spoon and taste a bit of fermented chili. Your tongue tingles. Suddenly a new memory rises. Your first campaign, when you shared a bowl of bitter soup with a scout who later saved your life. You remember the way his hands trembled from cold, how he'd slurped the noodles like they were an apology to the world. You never knew his name. But now you remember the soup. You step back, bowl forgotten, and sit on a bench at the edge of the pavilion. The dog curls up beside you. A paper lantern floats down from the trees, bumping gently into your shoulder, before drifting away again. You look around. The town has vanished. You're surrounded by bamboo and night sounds. Crickets wind the occasional drip of water from a leaf. You've somehow wandered past the edge of the city, or maybe the city wandered around you. The stars above shift slightly, and for a moment you think you can see patterns in their arrangement. A noodle bowl, a dog, a crooked bridge. The heavens are mocking you, or celebrating you. It's hard to tell. But for the first time in hours, you don't feel lost. You feel placed. Not just full, but held. Like you've wandered so long that you've become part of the wandering itself. You exhale. The air tastes of broth. The dog snores gently. And for the first time in a long while, you let yourself rest, not because the journey is over, but because you've found the rhythm of it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the next noodle shack even faster. Or maybe it'll find you. The bench beneath you creaks as you rise, the wood groaning like it's disappointed to lose your weight. The dog wakes to gives a stretch that seems to take several centuries off its joints, then trots ahead without waiting. You follow not because you know where you're going, but because finally, it doesn't matter. The red stone path has vanished behind you. In its place, a narrow trail weaves through low hedges and fog. The air grows denser. Lanterns flicker into view, then out again. Your boots splash through shallow puddles that reflect nothing, not even the moon. And then, just ahead, a murmur. Voices. Laughter. Footsteps that come and go without direction. You part a curtain of hanging beads, bone or shell hard to tell, and step into an open plaza you swear wasn't there 5 seconds ago. A ghost market. It's real, or real enough. Canvas stalls flap lazily in a breeze you don't feel. Vendors sit cross-legged behind wares both ordinary and absurd. Fermented eggs stacked like toppling towers. Jars of pickled lotus roots. A pile of what appear to be intricately carved radish figurines performing martial arts poses. No one calls out to you. No one tries to sell you anything. The ghost market doesn't care about gold. It trades in curiosity. A man with a face like a faded painting gestures you over. He offers you a bowl, small, delicate, lacquered in crimson and black. Empty, but warm. Fill it wisely, he says. You nod, accepting it with both hands. You wander the stalls, bowl in hand, selecting carefully. A dried scallion here. A spoonful of miso paste from a woman who smells like cinnamon and cloves. A whisper-thin strip of dried pork jerky gifted by a vendor who only speaks in gestures. Each ingredient added to your bowl hums with memory. The dog watches, then steals a pickled quail egg from a low basket. No one stops it. You spot a stall at the end of the lane, unlike the others. It has no goods, just a kettle boiling over an open flame, and an old woman sitting behind it with her eyes closed. You approach. She opens one eye, then the other. Hungry, she rasps. You hold out the bowl. She takes it, inspects your selections with a faint grunt and says, "Good balance." Then she dips it into the pot. Steam rises. It smells old. Not rotten old like wood smoke and letters you never sent. The broth curls around your choices like a memory being slowly rewritten. She hands the bowl back and whispers, "Don't ask what's in it. That's the rule." You nod. Take a seat on a crate beside her and begin to eat. It's different. More sour than the last bowl, but richer, spicier even. It tingles at the edges of your mouth, then settles into a satisfying warmth at the base of your neck. Your body responds immediately, muscles loosening, eyes, softening, heart settling into an ancient rhythm. The market continues its quiet murmur around you. A man walks past holding a broom made entirely of dried anchovies. Two women haggle over the price of silence, using hand gestures so precise they could be choreography. A child with hair like feathers offers you a wooden token carved in the shape of a spoon. You accept it. It feels heavier than it should. And through it all, the dog naps with the deep trust of someone who's seen everything twice. You slurp the last of the broth. The bowl is empty, but your chest feels full. The old woman pats your arm. One more stall, she says, for the direction you didn't know you needed. You rise, thank her, and turn. The stall in question is tiny, just a mat and a sign drawn in chalk. Questions answered with soup. A man with a face you recognize but can't place beckons you forward. He asks only one question. Did you find what you were looking for? You pause. How do you answer that? The noodles? Yes. But also clarity, confusion. Old smells, onion-breathed scribes, phantom shrines, chicken-sized obstacles, tofu philosophy, and soup that taught you how to listen. So you say the only thing that makes sense. I found something better. He nods, reaches under his mat, hands you a folded cloth map, no roads, no cities, just symbols, bowls, dogs, bridges, moons, and the occasional goose. Keep walking, he says. You pocket the map. As you leave, the market begins to fade, not vanish, fade, like a song at the edge of sleep. The stalls become silhouettes. The lanterns dim one by one. You look down. The dog is already ahead of you, tail swaying. You follow, because now the search is the destination, and somewhere always another bowl waits. You follow the dog out of the fading market where the scent of soy and pickled memory lingers in your clothes. The street narrows again. No signs, no lights, just the soft shuffle of your boots and the rhythmic sway of the dog's tail ahead. The fog thickens, then parts like curtains pulled back by invisible hands. And there, perched under a crooked pine tree, is a monk. Humpty, he's old, or at least you assume he is given the constellation of wrinkles on his face, and the way he breathes like the wind itself has weight. He sits cross-legged on a mat, his robes heavy with dew, hands resting in a bowl of prayer beads. His eyes are closed, his mouth moving without sound. A soft glow emanates from behind him, moonlight reflecting off something parchment-colored. He opens one eye. You've come far, he says. You nod, because at this point, what else can you do? He gestures to the spot beside him. You sit. He pulls a scrap of parchment from his robe and begins to draw slowly, deliberately with a brush dipped in black ink. You lean in. It's not a map this time. Not exactly. He sketches a bowl, then outlines delicate noodles curling like clouds. Beneath it, he draws your dog. Then beneath that, a line of buildings that bend and twist like they're laughing at geometry. Finally, at the top corner of the parchment, he paints a tiny sun. Then he looks at you. This is the place, he says, tapping the drawing. But you can only find it by not searching. You blink. That seems unnecessarily unhelpful. He chuckles. That's how it works. He stands graceful despite his years and hands you the parchment. As your fingers close around it, the paper feels warm, like it was baked in the sun of a memory that doesn't belong to you. You'll arrive just before you know you're there. He says. You want to ask another question, but he's already turned back to his silent prayers. You and the dog continue on. A wind picks up. Cold at first, then scented ginger scallion, something distinctly broth-like. You walk faster. The fog breaks like egg whites in hot oil. And up ahead, lanterns. But this time, they don't flicker. They blaze. The road widens and becomes a stone staircase, carved with etchings of steam and spoons. You ascend each step, humming faintly beneath your boots. At the top, a clearing opens, lush, silent, timeless. A walled garden. Low stone walls cradle flowering bushes, their blooms pale and fragrant. Bamboo rustles overhead. And at the center, a tiny structure made of wood, paper, and impossibility. You approach. A sign above the doorway is written in a dialect no longer spoken, but you somehow know what it means. Last bowl of the night. You step inside. It's warm, not hot, just perfectly, unmistakably warm, the way a kitchen feels when someone who loves you has been cooking for hours. A single low table waits. On it, a bowl. You don't sit right away. You walk the perimeter of the room. The walls are adorned with fragments of stories, tiny ink drawings, etched prayers, burned syllables in metal frames. One panel shows a man riding a goose across a city. Another shows a woman weeping into her soup. A third, a small child offering noodles to a passing stranger. You return to the bowl. Steam curls upward like smoke from a forgotten temple. You sit. You lift it. The broth smells like everything and nothing. Earth, sky, salt, grief, laughter. There's a spice you've never tasted but somehow recognize. You slurp slowly. The noodles are thinner here, almost translucent. They disappear the moment they hit your tongue like they were never there. You eat without rushing. Each bite tastes like a closing chapter. Not an ending exactly. A turning of the page. When the bowl is empty, you don't move. The silence here isn't empty. It's full of things you forgot to remember. The dog sighs. Somewhere beyond the wall, a flute begins to play, not a song you know, but one you've been waiting for. You place the parchment from the monk on the table. It vanishes. You don't question it, because this is not a place of questions anymore. This is the pause between one story and the next. You stand up slowly, as if waking from a dream you're reluctant to leave. The bench beneath you no longer creaks. The lanterns in the garden flicker lower, their soft light pulling inward like candle flames bowing in respect. The dog stretches beside you, yawns, and gives you a look that says, well, you step outside the noodle house, if that's even what it was. The air has changed. It's cooler now, but not unkind. There's a hush in the wind, the sort that comes just before dawn when the world holds its breath between night and light. Ahead, a man with a wheelbarrow trundles down the street whistling softly. The cart is filled with bowls, empty ones neatly stacked, each glistening slightly in the early morning dew. He nods at you, but doesn't stop. You nod back, understanding more than you can explain. The town feels different now, familiar. Not because you've figured it out, but because you've stopped expecting it to explain itself. You pass a shuttered tea house. A cat watches you from the rooftop, tail twitching. Somewhere, a rooster clears its throat, but doesn't quite commit to the crow. And then, you hear laughter. You follow it through a courtyard scattered with drying herbs past two children balancing on a barrel down a lane lined with wind chimes made from spoons and chopsticks. The laughter fades as you reach a small open stall lit by a single hanging oil lamp. An elderly vendor stands behind the counter wiping his hands on an apron embroidered with ducks playing mahjong. His beard is longer than your patience and twice as tangled. He gestures to the bench across from him. You sit wordlessly. He sets down a bowl without asking. Steam rises. This is different. The broth is thin, clear a whisper compared to the symphony you've tasted before. Inside a scattering of green onion, a single strand of mushroom, and a few handmade noodles shaped like tiny moons. You look up. He's smiling. Final course, he says. You taste it. Delicate, barely there, like a goodbye spoken too softly to interrupt silence. And still, it's enough. The bowl empties quickly, not because you're rushing, but because this meal was never meant to fill your stomach. It's meant to complete the ritual. The vendor pulls a small box from under the counter. Inside, slips of paper, each one folded tightly. He lets you pick. You open it. It reads, "Nothing tastes as good as being found." You stare at the words longer than necessary. He nods as if you've passed some unspoken test and hands you a folded scrap of cloth. "You'll need this," he says. It's a napkin. Embroidered in red, a tiny goose chasing a bowl of noodles. You laugh, tired, genuine. He waves you off. You leave the stall cloth tucked in your pouch and follow the faint sound of music, this time a string instrument played lazily like someone killing time before breakfast. At a bend in the road, a boy waves you down. "You missed the shop," he says. You smile. "No, I didn't." He stares at you for a moment, puzzled, then runs off. You continue walking. The streets begin to fill now. Not crowded, just populated. A woman arranging leeks on a mat. A man unrolling bolts of cloth dyed with what smells suspiciously like squid ink. A group of teenagers passing a kettle of tea like it's contraband. You pass through them like a mist, noticed but not questioned. And then a man approaches. Tall, awkward gait fingers stained with ink. He looks vaguely familiar. Maybe from the scroll pavilion. He points to your pouch. You still have the paper money. You blink. You'd forgotten about that. You reach in, pull out the slip of yuan currency from what feels like days ago. It's slightly damp now. Smells like soup, but otherwise intact. He nods. "I can take that off your hands." "What do I get?" He thinks. "Directions." Ish. You hand it over. He pulls a map from his robe, one scrawled hastily with arrows scribbled notes like, "Turn where the noodles smell best and ignore the goose, always ignore the goose." You take it, trying not to smile. The man vanishes into a crowd of school children. You stand there holding this ridiculous map that somehow mirrors your own journey and realize that none of it really matters. The turns, the signs, even the noodles. What mattered was the walking, the listening, the laughing, the small kindnesses. You fold the map and keep walking anyway. Because you're not quite done yet. You keep walking because there's nothing else to do and everything else to discover. The streets begin to stretch wider now. The buildings are lower, more sun-faded with tiles like scales on sleepy fish. A breeze slips through them, rustling paper signs and nudging you forward like an old friend's elbow. The dog, still faithfully padding along, pauses to sniff a cabbage leaf pinned to a doorway, then resumes its silent guiding. You pass a group of musicians tuning their instruments beside a pile of dumpling crates. They barely notice you. A man flips a pancake into the air and catches it behind his back. You clap once. He winks. The smell of vinegar and morning rise drifts through the alleys. And then you arrive at a shack so humble it looks like a storage closet for other more confident shacks. A wooden sign above the door hangs crookedly, one nail short of collapse. The paint is faded, but you can make out the barely legible word for noodle. Or possibly mood. Either would be appropriate. This must be it. You step inside. A woman stands behind the counter, back turned, ladling something into a large pot that gurgles softly, like it's been simmering since the Song Dynasty. She doesn't look up. You wait. A moment later, she speaks without turning around. You've come far. You nod, forgetting she can't see you. She continues. Not many make it all the way here. You consider asking here where exactly. But you don't. You've learned better. Instead, you take a seat at the lone wooden table in the room. The dog curls beneath its tail, gently sweeping the floor. The woman sets a bowl in front of you with a quiet clink. You don't need to look. You know what it is. The noodles are wide, soft, uneven, clearly handmade, maybe even by someone laughing while they worked. The broth is light gold, speckled with oil like stars on a soup sky. Floating in it are bits of pickled mustard greens, slices of radish, and what may be a sliver of smoked duck. It smells like history, and healing, and hunger, finally met halfway. You take the first bite. You've never tasted anything like it. Not because the ingredients are rare, they aren't. But because the flavor is exactly what your body needs, what your night has earned. A warm reunion in edible form. The woman sits across from you. She looks at you carefully, not unkindly, and says, "So what did you learn?" You stare into your bowl. That being lost isn't always wrong. She nods. Good start. She sets down a second bowl. This one's empty. A tiny crack splits its rim. "Take this with you," she says. You frown. Why? In case you get hungry again. You pick it up. It's light, worn, the kind of bowl that's been used more times than anyone can count. You run your thumb along the crack. It fits. You'll find more shops, she says, rising. But not the same one. You look up. Was this real? She smiles. You're holding the bowl, aren't you? She turns away and vanishes behind a beaded curtain. You sit a while longer watching the steam curl upward from your finished meal. The dog stands, yawns, and noses your knee. You take the bowl and head out. The street outside is bathed in early morning light. The mist is lifting. You pass familiar corners now, only slightly changed. The tea shop has opened. The laundry line has fresh robes. The shrine with the one-eyed bird god now holds 2 cups of rice and a coin. You round a corner and hear footsteps. It's the plum seller. Again, he sees you, smiles, and gestures to his jars. You approach. But instead of pointing at his plums, he holds up a spoon. A simple wooden spoon, but carved with the same symbol you saw above the last bowl shack, the spiraling steam. Trade, he asks. You pull out the cracked bowl. He gasps slightly respectfully and hands you the spoon without hesitation. Then he bows. Deeply, you return the gesture. Because now you understand. This town is not a place, not really. It's a story you walk through. A dish you assemble, one flavor at a time. A dream built from hunger, memory, and kindness passed between strangers. You look down the street. No map this time, Just your feet. Just your spoon. Just the sound of the noodle wind calling softly from somewhere ahead. And the dog, of course. Always the dog. You follow the dog down the sunlit path, spoon in hand, the cracked bowl now tucked gently in your pack, like an old friend riding quietly behind your shoulder. The fog is gone, replaced by light filtering through lattice windows and trees with leaves so green they border on myth. The street ahead is lined with sleeping lanterns and carts half covered in tarps, like the town itself is just waking up, stretching out of its surreal night and into the realism of dawn. There's a bakery now suddenly alive with life. Loaves line the windows like proud children showing off report cards. You pass it, inhaling deep sweet bean paste, toasted barley flour, and something savory baking into the walls. But you don't stop. The hunger you feel now isn't about food. It's something softer, sleepier. You reach a square where a group of travelers is gathered debating directions in 5 different languages. One of them wears a falcon on their wrist. Another holds a map upside down. You offer them the bowl in your pack. Lost, you ask. They nod. You smile. You'll need this more than I do. They accept it reverently as though you've handed them the moon. The exchange is wordless. It feels like handing off a torch or a compass that doesn't point north, but toward wherever your next story begins. You keep walking. At the edge of the square stands a woman with a broom made of tea leaves. She sweeps slowly, rhythmically, like her goal is not cleanliness, but memory. She looks up as you pass. Did you find what you were looking for? You pause. You don't say yes. You don't say no. You just tap the spoon against your palm and say, I think I found the road that goes there. She nods, then continues sweeping. The buildings begin to blur again as you move forward subtly at first, then more obviously. Doorways lose their sharpness. Roofs begin to tilt at odd angles. A man walks past carrying a bucket filled with sound. Not music, not noise, just sound. You try to look back, but can't. Not because something's blocking your way, but because there's nothing behind you anymore. Only forward. Only the next step. And then, yes, there it is again. That smell. A trace of sesame oil. A hint of scallion. The unmistakable sizzle of noodles hitting hot metal. You turn a corner and find a woman crouched over a pan in an alley too narrow to exist. She looks up, not startled, not surprised, as if she's been waiting, hungry. You nod. She hands you a plate. No menu, no choices. The noodles are pan-fried this time, crispy at the edges, tangled like a poem, with too many adjectives. You eat standing, the dog watching you with mild envy. You drop a piece. It catches it midair. You chew slowly. The sun climbs higher. The sounds of the town return, vendors' bells, footsteps, laughter echoing off brick walls. The woman wipes her hands and says, You're ready now. Ready for what? She doesn't answer. She just hands you a folded paper. You open it. It's blank. No writing, just the smell of star anise and memory. You fold it again and place it in your pocket. You leave the alley. There is no town now. Only a road leading into green hills. The dog walks beside you. You think of maps without borders, bowls without owners, soup with no recipe. You think of the way a single spoon can point the way forward. And for the first time since the night began, you laugh. Because you're not lost anymore. You're just not home yet. The road beneath your feet changes again, almost imperceptibly. Stones, giving way to packed earth, then to gravel, then to something like memory. It no longer crunches or echoes. It simply carries you forward. The trees here are tall or older. Their trunks bend gently over the path, not to block it, but to bless it. The dog trots ahead at a comfortable pace. You no longer question where it's leading you. It moves with purpose and ease like a ferry gliding across a river you don't need to cross, only float through. And then, just beyond a curve in the road, you see it. A structure, no bigger than a cottage, tucked between trees as if grown there rather than built. Its roof is laced with moss. Steam curls from the chimney in a perfect spiral. The door is open. Inside, you can already hear the soft clatter of bowls, the hush of boiling water, the rhythmic chopping of scallions. This is the last stop. You know it before stepping through the door. You enter. No one greets you. There's no need. The space is silent, sunlit through slatted windows. The air is thick with peace and miso. A small table waits in the center, a bowl already placed at its heart. You sit. The bowl is simple, unglazed, perfect. You lift it, and as the steam curls around your face, time slows. This broth is thinner than the rest, lighter. It tastes like wind and warmth and stories told with eyes half shut. You sip. The noodles are sparse, only a few, but they float like gentle punctuation in the sentence of the soup. You don't speak. No one does. The dog curls beneath your bench for the last time, exhales a sigh that stirs the steam above your bowl. And with every bite, you feel the night dissolve. Not vanish, just soften. The way dreams do when you wake with a smile, but forget the plot. The last spoonful is silent. You place the bowl down, and for a moment the entire world holds still. You sit there, letting it cradle you. You've walked through a town that rearranged itself with every step chase rumors, that tasted like reality, listened to tofu philosophers and ghostly scribes. You've been misled by geese, guided by dogs, and served soup that remembered you before you even existed. Historians still argue whether any of this ever happened, but they don't have your spoon. And they didn't meet the dog. You stand not out of urgency but closure. You walk to the door. Behind you, a kettle whistles softly, then goes quiet. Outside, the morning light spreads across the path like melted gold. The trees sway not with wind but with breath. The dog trots ahead, and you follow, not because you're still looking, but because you're still walking. Because sometimes that's the same thing. And now, as your journey slows, let your breath ease into rhythm with the hush of your heartbeat. Imagine the path behind you, softening its twists and turns, fading into a blur of lanterns, bridges, steam, and quiet laughter. The fog has lifted. The bowls are empty. And your feet are light, no longer chasing but carried gently by memory. The dog walks a little slower now. Its tail swings like a metronome set to calm. The trees part, revealing fields that stretch like linen across the earth, stitched with narrow trails and dotted with tea bushes and wild ginger. You feel the last warmth of broth in your chest. Not heat exactly, but comfort. The kind that stays. You don't need maps anymore. Not when you've learned to follow scent, instinct, and silence. Let your eyes drift gently shut if they haven't already. Let the taste of sesame and scallion become a distant echo. Let the sounds fade, the soup slurping the murmured advice, the soft snore of a dog beneath a bench. Even the stories can wait. The shrines and scrolls, the singing monks, the alleyways and toothless vendors, all of them slowly folding themselves into dreams. There is no next shop. There is no last bowl. Just breath and softness and sleep. So lay back, let the road dissolve, and let your story end tonight here just before you find the next noodle shop. Sweet dreams.